Finding out my father wasn't real was the best news I ever got. The manila envelope felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my hands. 3 weeks and $1,200 later, Marcus Webb, private investigator extraordinaire, was finally giving me the ammunition I needed to prove my father was embezzling from his own company. At least, that's what I thought I was paying for. You might want to sit down for this one, Sarah, Marcus said, his weathered face more serious than I'd ever seen it. His cramped office above the Chinese restaurant on 5th Street suddenly felt smaller, the fluorescent light buzzing like an angry wasp. Just tell me you found something, I said, clutching my lukewarm coffee. Tell me there's finally a way to make Richard Blackwood pay for being the world's shittiest father. Marcus cleared his throat and adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses. Sarah, there's no easy way to say this. The man you know as Richard Blackwood, he's not your father. I laughed. Actually laughed. What do you mean? Like, biologically? Because honestly, that would explain why we look nothing alike. My mom always said I got her genes, but... No. Marcus pulled out a photograph and slid it across his desk. I mean, he's not Richard Blackwood. His real name is Daniel Morrison. He's been living under a false identity for 28 years. Your entire life. The photograph showed a younger version of my father, or whoever the hell he was, but the name on the ID card read Daniel Morrison. Born March 15, 1962. Occupation listed as actor. This has to be wrong. My coffee cup rattled against the desk as I set it down with shaking hands. You're telling me my father is, what? In witness protection? I wish it were that simple. Marcus opened a thick folder and began laying out documents like he was dealing cards. Bank statements, contracts, emails. Daniel Morrison was hired in 1995 by a man named Dr. Edwin Reeves. Paid $50,000 upfront, plus $2,000 monthly for an ongoing performance. The room started spinning. Performance? According to these contracts, Morrison was hired to play the role of your father. To act cold, demanding, impossible to please. Marcus's voice got quieter. Sarah, Dr. Reeves is a behavioral psychologist. He's been running an unauthorized psychological experiment. On you. I stared at the papers, but the words kept swimming together. Contract terms. Performance notes. Progress reports. My name appeared over and over again. Subject displays increased artistic output when criticized. And rejection triggers predictable emotional responses. For how long? I whispered. 28 years. Since you were born. The fluorescent light buzzed louder. Or maybe that was just the sound of my entire reality cracking apart. Every memory I had, every report card criticism, every disappointed sigh when I chose art school over business, every time he made me feel like I wasn't good enough, smart enough, worthy enough, it was all scripted. Where is he now? I asked, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Which one? The actor. Daniel Morrison. Marcus hesitated. Still playing the role. Still cashing those checks. As far as he knows, I'm just another private investigator his daughter hired to dig up dirt on him. He has no idea you've discovered the truth. I stood up, legs unsteady but determination crystallizing in my chest like ice. For the first time in my life, the constant weight of my father's disappointment wasn't pressing down on my shoulders. Good, I said, gathering the evidence. Then he won't see what's coming next. The drive home from Marcus's office passed in a blur of traffic lights and half-formed plans. By the time I pulled into my apartment complex, I had 17 missed calls from my best friend Jenny and a text that read, "Emergency wine night. Your place. 8 p.m. No excuses." I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at the stack of documents on my passenger seat. 28 years of my life reduced to manila folders and photocopied contracts. The evening sun cast long shadows through my windshield, and for a moment, I almost convinced myself this was all some elaborate nightmare. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel Morrison, the man I'd called Dad for nearly 3 decades. Sarah, we need to discuss your art school loans. Dinner Sunday at 7. We're something professional for once. The same condescending tone. The same calculated disappointment. Except now I knew it was literally calculated. I scrolled up through our message history, seeing every interaction through this new lens. How much of this was scripted? Did he have a handbook titled, How to Crush Your Fake Daughter's Dreams in 10 Easy Steps? I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Marcus with a message. Is he required to be this much of an asshole, or is that artistic interpretation? His response came back within minutes, found the performance guidelines. 647 pages. Want me to send them over? 647 pages. Someone had written a dissertation-length manual on how to psychologically torment me. Part of me was impressed by the thoroughness. The rest of me wanted to burn something down. Inside my apartment, I spread everything across my kitchen table like I was planning a heist. Bank statements showed regular payments from something called Rees Research Foundation dating back to 1995. There were performance reviews, actual performance reviews, rating Daniel's authenticity and emotional impact. One from 2018 noted, subject's artistic productivity increased 34% following criticism of gallery showing. Recommend maintaining disapproval of creative pursuits. My gallery showing. The one where I'd sold 3 paintings and felt genuinely proud for the first time in years. He'd spent the entire evening pointing out flaws in my brushwork and questioning whether I was serious about building a real career. I'd cried in the bathroom between conversations with potential buyers. That breakdown had been orchestrated. Planned. Budgeted for at $2,000 plus performance bonuses. I found a folder labeled Subject Behavioral Patterns 2019 to 2023 and nearly threw up. Page after page of detailed observations about my reactions to various triggers. My fear of disappointing him. My tendency to overwork when criticized. The way I'd started second-guessing every creative decision. Subject exhibits classic signs of chronic approval-seeking behavior, one report noted. Recommend increasing criticism frequency to test resilience thresholds. They'd been pushing me toward a breaking point. Methodically. Scientifically. At 8:03 p.m., Jenny burst through my door with 2 bottles of wine and a family-sized bag of cheese puffs. Okay, what's the crisis? Did the gallery reject your? She stopped mid-sentence, taking in the paper explosion covering my furniture. Jesus, Sarah. Did you rob a bank or join a conspiracy theory Facebook group? Option 3, I said, holding up a contract with Daniel Morrison's real signature. I found out my entire life has been a lie. Jenny set down the wine very carefully. I'm going to need you to start from the beginning. And speak slowly, because I'm already 3 episodes behind on my own drama and I cannot handle plot twists right now. I handed her the photograph of Daniel Morrison's actor ID. Remember how you always said my dad seemed like he was performing being an asshole instead of just naturally being one? Her face went pale. Sarah, please tell me this is some kind of elaborate art project. I poured Jenny a very large glass of wine and watched her face cycle through disbelief, horror, and what I could only describe as morbid fascination as I walked her through the evidence. By the time I finished explaining about Dr. Edwin Reeves and his 28-year psychological experiment, she was on her second glass and halfway through the cheese puffs. This is insane, she said, holding up a performance review dated last Christmas. He got a fucking bonus for making you cry at dinner. A Christmas bonus, Sarah. For emotional manipulation. $1,200, I said, pointing to the payment record. Apparently my breakdown over the mashed potatoes was worth $1,200. Jenny was quiet for a long moment, reading through the behavioral reports. Then she looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen before, pure, concentrated rage. We're going to destroy him. Them, I corrected. Both of them. Daniel Morrison and Dr. Edwin Reeves. Right, but first we need to. Jenny stopped mid-sentence, her face going white. Sarah. When's the last time you talked to your mom about your dad? My stomach dropped. I hadn't even thought about my mother in all of this. She died 6 years ago from cancer, and Daniel had been the perfect grieving widower. Supportive but distant. Sad but stoic. She never knew, I said slowly. She couldn't have known. She loved him. She defended him when I complained about. Or she was part of it. The words hung between us like a toxic cloud. I grabbed the folder of financial records, scanning through payment histories with new eyes. There, monthly deposits to an account under my mother's maiden name. Margaret Chin. $1,000 a month from 1995 until 2018. The payment stopped in March 2018. She died in February 2018. No, I whispered. No, no, no. She was the only one who actually loved me. She was the only one who. Jenny moved around the table and pulled me into a hug, but I pushed her away. I needed to see everything. I needed to know how deep this went. The payments to my mother were labeled as Consultant Emotional Support Protocol. There were progress reports in her handwriting. Her actual handwriting, the same careful script she'd used to sign my birthday cards. Subject requires maternal validation to balance paternal rejection, she'd written in 2005, after I'd gotten into art school. Recommend increased affection and support to prevent complete emotional shutdown. My mother's love, the one thing I thought was real, the one relationship I believed was genuine, had been scripted too. Every hug, every encouraging word, every time she dried my tears after another confrontation with Dad had been part of the performance. I need air, I said, stumbling toward my balcony. Sarah, wait. But I was already outside, gripping the railing and staring down at the parking lot 4 floors below. My whole life was a stage set. Everyone I'd ever loved was an actor following a script written by some psychopath in a lab coat. My phone rang. The caller ID read Dad. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Hello, Daniel, I said. There was a pause. A long, telling pause. I'm sorry, what did you call me? I called you by your name. Daniel Morrison. Born March 15, 1962. Professional actor. Should I continue, or do you want to drop the performance now? Silence. Then, I think we need to have a conversation. Yes, I said, my voice steady for the first time in years. We absolutely do. Meet me at Russo's in an hour, Daniel said, his voice stripped of the paternal authority I'd known my entire life. Come alone. Or what? You'll ground me? Take away my allowance? I laughed, and it sounded foreign to my own ears. I have 647 pages of your performance manual, Daniel. I know exactly how this conversation is supposed to go. Another pause. Sarah, you don't understand the full situation. Then explain it. But we're meeting somewhere public. Russo's Diner on Madison. 1 hour. I hung up before he could respond and found Jenny standing in my doorway, holding a tablet with Dr. Edwin Reeves' LinkedIn profile pulled up. Your puppet master, she said, turning the screen toward me. Distinguished professor of behavioral psychology at Whitmore University. Specializes in long-term environmental conditioning and creative output optimization. He's got 43 published papers and a TED Talk called The Beautiful Cruelty of Controlled Adversity. The photo showed a man in his 70s with kind eyes and a grandfather's smile. He looked like someone who'd bake cookies and remember your birthday, not orchestrate a decades-long psychological torture experiment. He's been using your data, Sarah. Your pain. Look at this. Jenny scrolled to his publications list. Artistic Productivity Under Sustained Parental Disapproval, a 25-year case study. Published in the Journal of Applied Psychology, 2020. Environmental Manipulation and Creative Resilience, Long-Term Outcomes in Controlled Adversity Scenarios. That one came out last year. My hands started shaking again. He's been publishing papers about me? Using my name? Anonymized, but yeah. Your subject 7 alpha in every single study. Your breakdowns, your art, your entire emotional development, it's all academic literature now. Jenny's voice got harder with each word. This sick fuck has built his entire career on your suffering. I stared at the list of publications. 12 papers over 8 years, all featuring data from my psychological profile. Citations from other researchers. Academic awards. He'd won the Hartwell Prize for Innovative Research Methods in 2021. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, Ms. Chen. This is Dr. Reeves. I believe we have much to discuss. Would you prefer to meet before or after your dinner with Daniel? The blood drained from my face. Jenny, how the hell does he know I'm meeting Daniel? I just hung up 2 minutes ago. She grabbed my phone, staring at the message. They're in contact. Of course they're in contact. This is still an active experiment, Sarah. You figuring out the truth, this might be part of it too. That possibility hit me like ice water. What if my hiring Marcus Webb was anticipated? What if the private investigator was part of the setup? What if my dramatic discovery and righteous anger were just the next phase of whatever sick study they were conducting? I called Marcus immediately. The investigator I hired, I said when he picked up. How did I find you? What do you mean? How did I get your name? Where did I find your contact information? You called my office. Said you'd gotten my number from the Yellow Pages listing. But I remembered now. I'd found a business card tucked under my windshield wiper 3 weeks ago, right after my last fight with Daniel about my irresponsible career choices. A business card for web investigations with discreet family matter specialists printed in small text at the bottom. Marcus, I said slowly. Did you put your business card on my car? No. I don't do windshield marketing. Too unreliable. I ended the call and looked at Jenny. They wanted me to find out. This whole revelation, it's orchestrated too. My phone rang again. Dr. Reeves this time, calling from the same number that had texted me. Hello, Sarah, he said when I answered. His voice was warm, grandfatherly. I imagine you have questions. A few thousand, yeah. Would you like to know why we chose you? What makes you so special? Despite everything, I felt a sick curiosity rising in my chest. Even knowing this was manipulation, part of me wanted to hear that I'd been selected for something important. That my pain had meant something. 30 minutes, he said. Riverside Park, by the sculpture garden. Daniel will be there too. It's time you learned what you really are, Sarah. And what you're about to become. The line went dead. Jenny was staring at me with wide eyes. Please tell me you're not actually considering meeting them. I was already grabbing my jacket. I need to know how deep this goes. And besides, I held up my phone, which had been recording the entire conversation. I'm not going in defenseless this time. The sculpture garden at Riverside Park looked different at night. The abstract metal forms that seemed whimsical during the day now loomed like twisted sentinels under the amber streetlights. I arrived 15 minutes early and positioned myself behind the large bronze spiral where I could see both entrances, my phone already recording in my jacket pocket. Daniel showed up first, walking with a familiar confident stride I'd known my whole life. But now I noticed things I'd missed before, the way he scanned the area like he was checking for cameras, the subtle earpiece barely visible beneath his graying hair. Even his posture looked different when he thought no one was watching. Less patrician businessman, more tired middle-aged actor between scenes. Dr. Reeves appeared from the opposite direction exactly at 9:30, punctual as a train schedule. He was smaller than his photos suggested, maybe 5'6" in his wool coat, carrying a leather briefcase that looked older than I was. When he smiled at Daniel, it was warm and familiar, the greeting of old colleagues, not employer and contractor. I stepped out from behind the sculpture. Gentlemen. Daniel's expression shifted into something I'd never seen before, not the cold disappointment of my childhood, but genuine concern mixed with what might have been guilt. Sarah, before you hear anything else, I need you to know that I never wanted to hurt you. But you took the money anyway. I kept my voice level, clinical. $2,000 a month for 28 years. That's $672,000, not counting bonuses. Dr. Reeves chuckled, settling onto a nearby bench like we were having a pleasant family reunion. You always were quick with numbers, Sarah. Just like your mother. My mother who you paid to fake loving me. That mother? Margaret wasn't faking anything, Daniel said sharply. Her feelings for you were completely real. The love, the pride, the worry, none of that was scripted. Then why the payments? Why the progress reports in her handwriting? Dr. Reeves opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick file folder. Because your mother volunteered for this project, Sarah. She came to me when you were 3 years old, after your biological father died in that car accident. The words hit me like a physical blow. My what? James Chen. Graphic designer, age 26, killed by a drunk driver in December 1998. Your mother was devastated, broke, and terrified she couldn't raise you alone. Dr. Reeves spoke like he was reading from a case study, which I realized he probably was. She saw my advertisement seeking single mothers willing to participate in a long-term child development study. The compensation was significant. I looked between them, my worldview reshaping again. So Daniel wasn't hired to play my father. He was hired to replace my father. To optimize your development, Dr. Reeves corrected. James was, by all accounts, a loving and supportive man. But my research suggested that controlled adversity in childhood produces more resilient, creative adults. We theorized that providing you with a challenging paternal figure while maintaining maternal support would create the ideal environment for artistic achievement. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. The original contract was for 5 years. Just through elementary school. But then your art started showing real promise, and the funding increased, and you got comfortable living off my psychological torture, I finished. It wasn't torture, Dr. Reeves said firmly. Look at what you've accomplished. 3 gallery showings, 12 paintings sold, a growing reputation in the local art scene. You're more successful at 28 than most artists achieve in a lifetime. Because I've been desperately trying to prove myself to someone whose approval was literally impossible to earn. Exactly. His eyes lit up with academic fervor. You've achieved optimal creative output through strategic emotional regulation. Your productivity increases an average of 34% following our structured criticism sessions. I stared at him, realizing he genuinely believed he'd done me a favor. In his mind, my decades of self-doubt and desperate people-pleasing weren't trauma, they were successful experimental outcomes. Here's what's going to happen, I said, pulling out my phone to show them the recording app. I'm going to expose everything. The fake father, the experiment, the published papers using my data without consent. I'm going to destroy both of your careers and sue for every dollar you've made off my misery. Dr. Reeves smiled. Oh, Sarah. You still don't understand. He pulled a document from his briefcase. Your mother signed a very comprehensive consent form. Legal guardians can authorize minors for research participation. And once you turned 18. He produced another paper. You've been receiving payments too. Every time you cashed those family emergency checks Daniel sent? Every time you accepted money for art supplies or rent assistance? You were accepting compensation as a voluntary research participant. My stomach dropped. The checks. The financial help over the years that I thought came from paternal guilt. I'd been unknowingly signing contracts with every deposit. You can't expose an experiment you legally consented to participate in, Dr. Reeves continued. But I have good news. The study is entering its final phase. The words final phase hung in the air like a threat. I gripped my phone tighter, making sure it was still recording. What final phase? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. Dr. Reeves pulled out another folder, this one labeled Phase 4, Post-Discovery Integration. My name was written across the tab in his neat handwriting. The revelation phase. We've been waiting for you to uncover the truth for over a year now. Your growing suspicion, the private investigator, this confrontation, all anticipated outcomes. Daniel looked genuinely surprised. Edwin, you told me she wasn't supposed to find out until we were ready to transition her to the next stage, Dr. Reeves interrupted smoothly. Sarah, you've spent 28 years creating art from a place of seeking approval. Now we want to see what you'll produce from a place of righteous anger. The sick genius of it hit me all at once. You think this will make me a better artist? The betrayal, the rage, you're counting on it to fuel my creativity. Our models suggest your productivity will increase by at least 60% over the next 18 months. Anger is a powerful motivator, particularly when channeled into creative expression. He opened the folder, revealing detailed projections and timelines. We've already secured gallery interest for a potential show titled Manufactured Trauma, An Artist's Journey. The publicity from your story could make you genuinely famous, Sarah. You want me to turn my abuse into a marketing campaign? We want you to transform your experience into art that matters. Isn't that what you've always wanted? To create something meaningful? His voice carried that same warm, grandfatherly tone that probably worked wonders on university donors. The trauma was real. The emotions were real. The art you'll create from this will be more authentic than anything you've produced so far. I looked at Daniel, who was staring at his hands. And what's your role in Phase 4? More father-daughter dinners where you pretend to care. My contract ends tonight, he said quietly. 28 years, 2 months, and 16 days. I've been counting. He finally met my eyes. For what it's worth, Sarah, I am proud of you. That was never scripted. How convenient to develop real feelings now that the checks are stopping. Dr. Reeves cleared his throat. Actually, the compensation structure is changing, not ending. Phase 4 involves a different kind of participation from both of you. Daniel will be transitioning from paternal figure to, let's call it supportive mentor. Someone who helps you process the revelation while encouraging your artistic development. Absolutely not. The words came out harsher than I intended. I'm done. With both of you, with this experiment, with everything. Find another lab rat. I'm afraid it's not that simple. Dr. Reeves pulled out what looked like a legal document. The consent forms your mother signed included a 25-year minimum participation clause. You have 2 years and 8 months remaining on your contract. The paper swam in front of my eyes as I tried to read it. Dense legal language about ongoing research commitments and financial penalties for early withdrawal. Numbers that made my head spin, $847,000 in compensation received to date that would need to be repaid if I withdrew from the study prematurely. This can't be legal, I said. You can't force someone to be a psychological test subject for 3 decades. Of course not, Dr. Reeves agreed. But we can enforce financial contracts. Every dollar your family received over the years would need to be returned, with interest. Your mother's medical bills alone. She's dead. You can't collect from a dead person. No, but her debt's transferred to her beneficiaries. That would be you. He smiled apologetically. The total amount, including penalties and interest, comes to approximately $1.2 million. I sank onto the bench beside him, the weight of the trap finally settling in. They hadn't just stolen my childhood, they'd built a financial prison I couldn't escape. Every loving memory with my mother was tainted by the knowledge that she'd sold me for research funding. Every dollar of help I'd accepted over the years was another chain keeping me locked in their experiment. However, Dr. Reeves continued, his voice brightening, full completion of Phase 4 comes with a substantial bonus. $500,000, plus royalties from any published research or media coverage. Think of it as compensation for your years of dedicated participation. My phone buzzed with a text from Jenny. Are you okay? It's been over an hour. An hour. I'd been sitting in this surreal nightmare for over an hour, and somehow the world had kept spinning. People were still living normal lives while mine imploded in increasingly creative ways. I need time to think, I said, standing up on unsteady legs. Of course, Dr. Reeves said, closing his briefcase with a satisfied snap. Take all the time you need. We'll be in touch next week to discuss your Phase 4 orientation. He walked away like he was leaving a pleasant dinner party, not the scene of a 28-year psychological crime. Daniel lingered, looking like he wanted to say something. Don't, I warned him. Whatever fatherly advice you think you owe me, just don't. But as I walked away, I heard him call after me, Sarah. The contract has loopholes. Edwin doesn't know everything. I didn't turn around, but I was listening. I made it 3 blocks before I had to pull over and throw up in a McDonald's parking lot. 28 years, 2 months, and 16 days of psychological manipulation, and somehow the worst part was knowing I had 967 more days to go. Jenny was waiting in my apartment with Chinese takeout and a laptop covered in post-it notes. Okay, I've been researching Dr. Frankenstein while you were gone, and holy shit, Sarah, this goes so much deeper than we thought. I collapsed onto my couch without taking off my jacket. He owns me for another 2 years. Legal contract. If I quit now, I owe them $1.2 million. Yeah, about that. Jenny turned her laptop toward me, showing a website called whistleblowerprotection.org. I've been reading about research ethics violations, and what they did to you. Super illegal. Like, federal crime illegal. The website was full of legal jargon I was too exhausted to parse, but one phrase jumped out at me: participants cannot be held financially liable for withdrawing from studies that violate ethical standards. It doesn't matter, I said. They have 28 years of paperwork saying my family consented to everything. My mother signed me away before I could even write my own name. But look at this. Jenny pulled up another tab showing a news article from 2019, Whitmore University professor under investigation for unauthorized human subjects research. The photo showed Dr. Reeves accepting some kind of academic award, that same grandfatherly smile beaming at the camera. I sat up straighter. What kind of investigation? The university's ethics board found out he was running long-term studies without proper oversight. Look at the dates. This investigation started 3 years ago, right around the time his publications about you really took off. Jenny scrolled down to the article's conclusion. He was cleared of wrongdoing because all his subjects were voluntary adult participants. But Sarah, you weren't an adult when this started. You were a baby. My phone rang. Daniel's number. Don't answer it, Jenny warned, but I was already picking up. What loopholes? I said instead of hello. Not over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? Somewhere Edwin doesn't know about. He has people watching your usual places. He has people watching me? Graduate students, mostly. Supposedly for participant safety monitoring, but really to make sure you don't do anything that disrupts the study. Daniel's voice sounded different without DR. Reeves around, less performative, more human. Sarah, there are things Edwin never told you. Things your mother made me promise to reveal if you ever found out the truth. I looked at Jenny, who was frantically gesturing for me to put the call on speaker. What kinds of things? Your mother kept records. Documentation that Edwin doesn't know exists. She wasn't just a grieving widow who needed money, she was suspicious of the whole setup from the beginning. His voice dropped lower. She spent 20 years gathering evidence that this experiment was illegal. Evidence that could destroy Edwin and get you out of that contract. The room started spinning again. Where are these records? That's what I need to show you. But Sarah, Daniel paused, and I could hear traffic in the background. Edwin suspects your mother kept backup documentation. If he figures out you're looking for it, he'll accelerate the timeline. Phase 4 could become Phase 5 a lot faster than you want. What's Phase 5? The line went quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. Daniel, what the hell is Phase 5? Complete identity dissolution, he said finally. Edwin wants to see what happens to your art if you lose all sense of self. The final phase involves removing every support system, every relationship, every anchor you have to reality. It's scheduled to begin 6 months after Phase 4 completion. I ended the call and stared at Jenny, who had gone completely pale. Okay, she said, closing her laptop with shaking hands. We're definitely finding those records. The next morning, I met Daniel at a 24-hour laundromat in Riverside, the kind of place that reeked of industrial detergent and broken dreams. He was already there when I arrived at 6 a.m. Feeding quarters into a washing machine like this was perfectly normal behavior for a man who'd spent 3 decades pretending to be my father. Your mother hid everything in a storage unit, he said without preamble, handing me a small silver key. Unit 247 at Secure Space on Maple Street. She paid for 25 years of front in 1999. I turned the key over in my palm. It was warm, like he'd been holding it for a while. How long have you known about this? Since she got sick. She made me swear I'd only tell you if Edwin pushed too far. Daniel fed another quarter into the machine, though I was pretty sure it was already running. She never trusted him, Sarah. From day one, she was documenting everything, recording conversations, photographing documents, keeping copies of every payment. Then why didn't she stop it? Why didn't she get me out? Because she was terrified of the financial penalties. And because... He paused, watching the clothes tumble through the machine's window. Because she genuinely believed the controlled adversity was making you stronger. She saw your art improving and convinced herself Edwin might be right. A woman with 3 screaming toddlers entered the laundromat, and Daniel immediately moved toward the exit. We can't stay here long. Edwin has grad students stationed around the city, and... Daniel. I grabbed his arm as he tried to walk past me. How many other families are there? How many other kids is he experimenting on right now? His face went ashen. Sarah, you need to get to that storage unit. Today. Before Edwin realizes what we're doing. Answer the question. 7 active subjects that I know of. Ages ranging from 4 to 31. Different experimental conditions. Some have the overly critical parent like you did, others have absent parents, neglectful parents, parents who move them around constantly to test attachment disruption. He pulled free from my grip. Subject 12 beta started last year. She's 5 years old. I felt sick. While I was planning my dramatic revenge against Dr. Reeves, there was a 5-year-old girl somewhere in this city being systematically damaged for his research. Multiple children, their entire emotional development being manipulated by a man who saw trauma as data points. Where are they? I don't know. Edwin compartmentalizes everything. Each actor only knows about their own assignment. Daniel checked his watch nervously. Sarah, the storage unit. Margaret's evidence could shut down all of it, but only if you get there before Edwin figures out what we're doing. I was already heading for the door when my phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Ms. Chen, this is Dr. Reeves. I hope you slept well. Could you stop by my office this afternoon? We have some Phase 4 paperwork to finalize. Daniel read the message over my shoulder and cursed under his breath. He's moving faster than expected. You have maybe 2 hours before he starts getting suspicious. Secure Space Storage turned out to be a sprawling complex of beige metal buildings that looked like a suburban prison. Unit 247 was in the back corner, far from the main office and security cameras. The key turned smoothly, and the metal door rolled up to reveal 25 years of my mother's secret investigation. She'd been thorough. Obsessively, beautifully thorough. The walls were covered with photographs, documents, and what looked like a detective's conspiracy board. Red string connected newspaper clippings about Dr. Reeves' research to bank statements showing payments to various actors. There were recordings, dozens of cassette tapes labeled with dates and names. Edwin phone call March 15th, 03. Daniel Performance Review July 22, 07. Sarah's birthday party, note coached responses. In the center of it all was a handwritten timeline in my mother's careful script, the Reeves experiment, a 25-year documentation project. She'd known. She'd always known exactly what Edwin was doing, and she'd been building a case against him the entire time. I found a thick folder labeled legal evidence, containing photocopies of the original consent forms, and Edwin's handwritten notes in the margins. Notes about subject conditioning and acceptable psychological pressure levels and trauma thresholds for optimal creativity. But the smoking gun was a series of recorded phone calls between my mother and Edwin from 2015. I played one on an old cassette player she'd left in the unit. Margaret, I need you to increase the emotional support protocols. Sarah's showing signs of depression that could interfere with her artistic output. She's showing signs of depression because your actor has been systematically destroying her self-esteem for 20 years, Edwin. The controlled adversity is working exactly as designed. Her paintings from the last gallery show were her most emotionally resonant yet. She cried for 3 hours after that gallery opening because Daniel spent the entire night criticizing her brushwork. And then she produced 4 new pieces in the following month. 4 pieces that sold within 2 weeks. Margaret, the methodology is sound. My mother's voice got cold in a way I'd never heard before. If you push her any harder, I'm pulling out of this study and taking everything I've documented to the University Ethics Board. You signed a binding contract. I signed a contract for a 5-year developmental study, not a lifetime of psychological abuse. I have every payment record, every performance review, every illegal modification you've made to the original protocol. Try to enforce that contract, Edwin, and I'll destroy your career. There was silence, then Edwin's voice, much more careful. What do you want? I want a guarantee that this ends when Sarah turns 28. I want the debt forgiveness clause activated so she can walk away clean. And I want insurance that if anything happens to me, she gets full access to everything I've documented. And in return? I keep playing the supportive mother for 3 more years. But Edwin? If you ever hurt my daughter more than absolutely necessary for your data collection, I will burn your entire research program to the ground. The recording ended with a click. I sat in that storage unit, surrounded by evidence of my mother's love and rage and 25-year plan for revenge, and finally understood that even her participation in the experiment had been a performance. She'd been protecting me the only way she knew how, from the inside. My phone rang while I was still processing the recordings. Jenny's name flashed on the screen, but when I answered, it wasn't Jenny's voice. Miss Chen? This is Detective Maria Santos with the LAPD. I'm calling about Jennifer Walsh. She's been in an accident. The cassette player slipped from my hands, clattering onto the concrete floor. What kind of accident? Hit and run, about 2 hours ago. She's stable, but she's been asking for you. She keeps saying something about stopping the doctor and that you're in danger. I was already throwing my mother's evidence into garbage bags. What hospital? Mercy General. But Miss Chen, the accident happened right outside your apartment building. We think someone might have been targeting her specifically. The storage unit suddenly felt like a trap. I grabbed the most important documents and ran for my car, my phone buzzing with increasingly frantic texts from Dr. Reeves. Sarah, where are you? We had an appointment scheduled. Please respond promptly. I'm concerned about your phase 4 adjustment. At Mercy General, I found Jenny in room 314 with her left leg in a cast and a spectacular black eye. She was awake and furious. They tried to fucking kill me, she said before I could even sit down. Black sedan, license plate covered. They waited until I was crossing the street to grab your spare key from the super, then gunned it straight for me. Who tried to kill you? Your psycho puppet masters. I called you 6 times this morning after I found something huge in your mom's financial records, but you were already meeting Daniel. Jenny struggled to sit up straighter. Sarah, your mother didn't just document the experiment. She embezzled from it. I stared at her. She what? The payments they were making to her account? She was skimming 20% off the top and hiding it in a separate fund. 20 years of skimming, plus interest, there's over $300,000 sitting in an account under your grandmother's maiden name. Jenny pulled a crumpled paper from her hospital gown pocket. Margaret Kim, account number 847291. The bank statements were in your apartment. How did you? I broke into your place this morning after you didn't answer my calls. Found a hidden compartment in your mom's old jewelry box with a spare key and account information. Jenny grabbed my hand. She left you enough money to pay off the contract penalty and still have money left over. She was planning your escape route the whole time. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Daniel. They know about the storage unit. Get out of the city. Now. I showed Jenny the message. Her face went white. There's more, she said quietly. I called the bank to verify the account. Sarah, your mother made a withdrawal request 3 days before she died. She was trying to transfer the entire amount to your name, but she died before the paperwork was finalized. So where's the money now? Frozen in probate. But here's the thing, the bank manager remembered the case because someone else has been trying to claim that money for the past 6 years. Someone with power of attorney documents claiming to be your legal guardian. I felt cold spreading through my chest. Dr. Reeves. He's been trying to get access to your mother's escape funds since 2018. The bank kept denying him because the power of attorney documents looked forged, but he's been persistent. Jenny squeezed my hand tighter. Sarah, I think your mother's death wasn't from cancer complications. I think they killed her when they found out about the money. The hospital room started spinning. Everything I thought I knew about my mother's death, the sudden downturn, the unexpected complications, the way Dr. Reeves had been so helpful with funeral arrangements, took on a sinister new meaning. My phone rang. Dr. Reeves. Answer it, Jenny whispered. But put it on speaker and keep him talking. I accepted the call with shaking fingers. Sarah, my dear, Dr. Reeves' voice filled the room, warm and concerned. I understand you've been exploring some old family storage units today. I do hope you found whatever closure you were looking for. Actually, Edwin, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady, I found exactly what my mother wanted me to find. There was a pause that stretched too long. I'm not sure I understand what you mean. The recordings, Edwin. 25 years of recorded phone calls where you admit to violating federal research ethics laws. The documentation of unauthorized modifications to approved study protocols. The evidence that you killed my mother when she threatened to expose you. Jenny squeezed my hand, warning me not to push too hard, but I was done being careful. Sarah, I think you may be experiencing some phase 4 adjustment difficulties. Paranoid thinking is a common response to revelation trauma. Why don't you come to my office so we can? So you can have another one of your graduate student spies run me down in the street? Like they did to Jenny 2 hours ago? The silence this time was different. Calculating. I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about, Dr. Reeves said finally, but his grandfatherly warmth had evaporated. However, I should mention that breaking into university storage facilities and removing research documentation constitutes theft of intellectual property. The materials in that unit belong to the Reeves Research Foundation. The materials in that unit belong to my dead mother, who spent 20 years documenting your crimes. I pulled out one of the bank statements Jenny had found, including the $347,000 you've been trying to steal from her estate since 2018. I have no idea. Account number 8472291, First National Bank of California, under the name Margaret Kim. Ring any bells, Edwin? Or should I mention the forged power of attorney documents you've been using to try to access those funds? The line went dead. Jenny stared at the phone. Holy shit, Sarah. You just declared war on a man who's been planning your psychological destruction for 3 decades. My phone immediately started buzzing with texts from Daniel. Whatever you just did, they're mobilizing. 3 cars just left the university heading toward downtown. Get out of the hospital now. Phase 5 protocols activated early. You have maybe 20 minutes. A nurse knocked on Jenny's door. Ms. Chen? There are some gentlemen here to see you. They said they're from your insurance company, but they're asking very specific questions about your friend's accident and your whereabouts today. Jenny and I looked at each other. Insurance investigators didn't work this fast, and they definitely didn't show up at hospitals asking about people's locations. Back exit, Jenny whispered, struggling to get out of bed despite her cast. My cousin Rico works security here. He can get us out through the loading dock. You can't walk with that leg. I can't stay here with those psychopaths downstairs. She grabbed a pair of crutches from the corner. Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't do anything stupidly heroic like confronting Dr. Frankenstein alone. We made it to the service elevator just as I heard voices in the hallway, professional, clipped tones asking the nurses about family members and emergency contacts. The elevator doors closed with a soft ding, and Jenny leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Okay, genius, she said. You've got $300,000 in blood money, evidence of a federal conspiracy, and a team of academic hitmen chasing us through downtown LA. What's the plan? I looked at the garbage bags full of my mother's documentation, then at my phone showing 6 missed calls from unknown numbers in the last 5 minutes. We're going to finish what my mother started, I said as the elevator reached the basement. We're going to destroy Edwin Reeves and everyone who helped him. But first, we need to get to that bank before they figure out how to access my mother's account. The loading dock opened onto an alley behind the hospital. Rico, Jenny's cousin, was waiting with a hospital van and a concerned expression. Jenny told me you two were in some kind of trouble, he said, helping her into the passenger seat. But she didn't mention people in suits asking security guards about surveillance footage. I climbed into the back with my bags of evidence, my heart hammering against my ribs. Through the rear window, I could see figures in dark clothing emerging from the hospital's main entrance, scanning the parking lot with professional efficiency. Rico, I said, how fast can this thing go? Rico's hospital van turned out to be surprisingly fast for something designed to transport wheelchairs and medical supplies. We made it to First National Bank in 12 minutes, running 3 red lights and taking a route through side streets that suggested Rico had experience avoiding unwanted attention. Bank closes in 40 minutes, Jenny said, checking her phone while struggling with her crutches. But Sarah, even if we get the money, what's stopping them from just killing us and making it look like an accident? I was already walking toward the bank entrance, my mother's account information clutched in one hand and her documentation in the other. Because dead test subjects can't produce phase 5 data. Edwin needs me alive for his grand finale experiment, which gives us leverage. That's a terrifying thing to find comforting, Rico muttered, but he followed us inside. The bank manager, Mrs. Patricia Huang, remembered the Margaret Kim account immediately. Oh yes, we've been dealing with fraudulent access attempts for years. Are you finally here to complete your mother's transfer request? Transfer request? Mrs. Huang pulled up the account on her computer. Your mother filed paperwork in February 2018 to move these funds into a trust account under your name, but she passed away before we could process the final authorization. We've been holding the money in escrow, waiting for proper documentation from her beneficiary. She turned the screen toward me. Account balance, $347,891.23. My mother's 20-year escape fund, sitting there waiting for me to claim it. The fraudulent attempts, I said, what kind of documentation were they using? Power of attorney forms, mostly. Very sophisticated forgeries. If we hadn't known your mother personally, we might have been fooled. The most recent attempt was just last week. Mrs. Huang clicked through several files. A Dr. Edwin Reeves claiming to be your legal guardian due to mental health concerns. Jenny grabbed my arm. They're escalating because they know you're close to breaking free. I pulled out my driver's license and birth certificate. What do I need to complete my mother's transfer? Just proof of identity and beneficiary status, which you have. Mrs. Huang began typing rapidly. However, given the unusual circumstances and the ongoing fraud attempts, I'd recommend transferring these funds to a new account at a different institution. Somewhere the people trying to steal from you won't know to look. How long does that take? With our expedited service? 20 minutes. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. They're tracking your phone. Edwin has university resources you don't understand. Whatever you're doing, finish it fast. I showed the message to Jenny, who immediately pulled out her own phone. I'm calling my brother Marcus. Not the PI, my other brother, the one who works in tech. If they're tracking us electronically, we need someone who knows how to disappear digitally. While Mrs. Huang processed the account transfer, I called Daniel back. Where are you? I asked when he answered. Somewhere Edwin can't find me. Sarah, listen carefully. Phase 5 isn't just about removing your support systems, it's about complete psychological breakdown. Edwin has been planning to have you committed to a psychiatric facility where he can control every aspect of your environment. The bank lobby suddenly felt too small, too exposed. Committed how? Fabricated mental health crises. Staged breakdowns in public. He's been building a case file suggesting you're dangerous to yourself and others. Daniel's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The hit and run on Jenny wasn't meant to kill her, it was meant to look like you had a psychotic break and tried to hurt your closest friend. That's insane. It's methodical. Edwin's final research question is whether artistic genius can emerge from complete psychological dissolution. He wants to document what happens to your creativity when you lose all connection to reality. Mrs. Huang cleared her throat. Ms. Chen? The transfer is complete. Your funds are now in a secure account at Pacific Trust, and I've flagged your file for additional fraud monitoring. I pocketed the new account information and bank cards, feeling like I was holding my first real weapon in this war. $300,000 was enough to disappear, enough to fight back, enough to fund a counterattack that Edwin wouldn't see coming. Daniel, I said, still on the phone, where are the other test subjects? The kids who are still trapped in active experiments? Sarah, you can't save everyone. You need to focus on the 5-year-old girl. Subject 12 beta. Where is she? The line was quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. Finally, Riverside Elementary. Her name is Emma Torres. But Sarah, if you interfere with an active experiment, Edwin will have grounds to have you arrested for harassment and stalking. You'll be playing directly into Phase 5. I looked at Jenny, who was watching me with growing alarm. He's right, she said quietly. We can't save other people if we're locked up in psychiatric wards ourselves. But as we left the bank, my phone buzzed with a news alert that made my blood run cold. Local child found unresponsive at elementary school. Authorities investigating possible abuse. The school was Riverside Elementary. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. Change of plans, I told Rico, climbing back into the van. We're not running anymore. The news van outside Riverside Elementary confirmed my worst fears. I counted 3 police cars, an ambulance, and a cluster of reporters with cameras, all focused on the small brick building where a 5-year-old girl named Emma Torres had collapsed during afternoon recess. We can't just walk up there, Jenny said, adjusting her crutches as we parked across the street. If Edwin's people are monitoring the situation, they'll spot us immediately. But I was already pulling up social media on my phone, searching for any parents posting about the incident. Within minutes, I found a Facebook group called Riverside Elementary Parents with dozens of posts from this afternoon. Emma Torres rushed to hospital. Teachers say she just started screaming and couldn't stop. Poor baby was talking about how her daddy doesn't love her anymore. Heartbreaking. 4th time this month a kid has had a breakdown at school. What's going on? 4th time. I scrolled through the group's history and found similar posts dating back 6 months. Children having unexplained emotional crises, always involving family rejection themes. Always kids whose names I didn't recognize, which meant they probably weren't local. My phone rang. Dr. Reeves. I assume you've heard about the unfortunate incident at Riverside Elementary, he said without preamble. His grandfatherly warmth was completely gone now, replaced by clinical detachment. Young Emma is experiencing some adjustment difficulties with her current family dynamic. You mean the family dynamic you orchestrated? I put the call on speaker so Jenny could hear. The fake father who's systematically destroying a kindergartner's sense of self-worth? Emma's case is particularly interesting because we're testing accelerated timeline protocols. What took 28 years with you, we're achieving in 18 months with more intensive intervention strategies. His voice carried the same academic excitement I'd heard when he discussed my own data. The preliminary results suggest that younger subjects require significantly less conditioning to reach optimal creative stress levels. Jenny grabbed my arm so hard I nearly dropped the phone. He's torturing a baby for art projects, she whispered. The beautiful thing about Phase 5, Sarah, is that it works both ways, Dr. Reeves continued. Your desperate need to save Emma Torres will accelerate your own psychological breakdown. Maternal instincts toward endangered children are remarkably predictable triggers for emotional dysregulation. Through the van's windshield, I watched paramedics wheeling a tiny figure on a gurney toward the ambulance. Even from this distance, I could hear crying, the kind of heartbroken sobbing that comes from a child who can't understand why the world suddenly feels unsafe. You want me to interfere, I realized. This whole setup, Emma's collapse happening right when I discover the other subjects, it's designed to push me into doing something that looks mentally unstable. Very good, Sarah. Though I prefer to think of it as providing you with appropriate motivation to enter your final experimental phase. Dr. Reeves paused, and I heard papers shuffling in the background. Emma will recover, of course. Children are remarkably resilient. But her active father has instructions to increase emotional pressure significantly over the next few weeks. Unless, naturally, someone were to interfere with the study protocols. The trap was elegant in its cruelty. Do nothing, and watch a 5-year-old be systematically traumatized. Try to help, and provide Edwin with evidence that I was having paranoid delusions about fictional conspiracies involving child abuse. However, Dr. Reeves added, his tone brightening, I'm prepared to offer you a deal. Rico started the van's engine without being asked, his eyes fixed on 3 black sedans that had just turned onto the street behind us. Ladies, we've got company. What kind of deal? I asked, even as Jenny was frantically gesturing for me to hang up. Complete your Phase 5 protocols voluntarily, 6 months of intensive psychological observation in a controlled residential facility, and I'll terminate Emma's experiment immediately. She goes back to her real mother, no lasting damage, no further intervention. The black sedans were getting closer, moving with the coordinated precision of people who had done this before. And if I refuse? Then Emma's case study continues for another 17 months, and you spend the next few years fighting legal battles you can't afford while I publish papers about your descent into paranoid schizophrenia. His voice turned genuinely warm for the first time in the call. Really, Sarah, it's quite generous. One life for another, and you get to be a hero in the process. The first sedan was now close enough that I could see the driver, a young man in a university sweatshirt who looked like he should be studying for finals, not participating in elaborate psychological warfare. I need 24 hours to decide, I said. You have 6 hours. After that, Emma's evening session with her actor father becomes significantly more intensive. The line went dead just as Rico gunned the van's engine and took a sharp right turn that threw us against the side windows. 6 hours, Jenny said, checking the side mirror as we weaved through residential streets. To choose between sacrificing yourself or letting them destroy a kindergartner. I looked at the bags of my mother's evidence scattered across the van floor, then at the bank cards representing her 20-year escape fund, then at my phone showing Emma Torres' school photo from a news article, a little girl with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile who had no idea her entire family life was a carefully constructed lie. We're not choosing, I said, pulling up my brother Marcus's number on Jenny's phone. We're changing the game entirely. Marcus turned out to be everything Jenny had promised, a tech wizard with questionable ethics and an impressive collection of surveillance equipment crammed into his downtown loft. Within 30 minutes of our panicked phone call, he'd set up what looked like a small-scale war room, complete with multiple monitors displaying traffic cameras, university security feeds, and something he called digital footprint mapping. Your Dr. Frankenstein has been busy, he said, pulling up financial records that definitely weren't public information. The Reese Research Foundation has been funneling money through shell companies for years. Look at this, payments to actors, surveillance contractors, even a few people who work at Child Protective Services. Jenny nearly fell off her chair, crutches clattering to the floor. He's got people inside CPS? 2 caseworkers and a supervisor, all receiving monthly consulting fees. Marcus clicked through bank statements showing regular payments of $3,000 each. My guess? They're the ones who help arrange custody for his test subjects. Make sure the right kids end up with the right experimental families. I stared at Emma Torres' CPS file on one of his screens, a little girl who'd been removed from her biological mother 18 months ago for financial instability and placed with what the system showed as a loving foster family. The foster father was listed as Michael Torres, occupation freelance consultant. Michael Torres doesn't exist, Marcus continued, pulling up identity records. Real name is Kevin Walsh, yes, Jenny, same last name as you, but no relation. He's been a professional actor for 12 years, mostly commercial work until he got recruited by Edwin's people. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Sarah, this is Emma's real mother, Rosa Torres. Someone told me you might be able to help get my daughter back. Please call me. I showed the message to Marcus, who immediately started typing furiously. That number traces to a prepaid phone purchased 3 hours ago in East LA. Either it's really her, or it's another trap, Jenny finished. Sarah, you can't trust anyone right now. Edwin's had decades to set up contingency plans. But something about the message felt different from Edwin's calculated manipulations. Desperate instead of strategic. I called the number. Ms. Chen? The woman's voice was thick with tears and exhaustion. My name is Rosa Torres. I've been trying to get my daughter back for over a year, but every time I meet the legal requirements, they find new reasons to deny me custody. How did you get my number? A man called me this morning. Said his name was Daniel Morrison and that you were investigating the people who took Emma. He told me what they're doing to her, the psychological experiments, the fake father. Rosa's voice broke completely. I've been working 3 jobs to afford a custody lawyer, but every time we get close to a court date, something happens. My lawyer gets conflicting information, documents go missing, witnesses suddenly become unavailable. Marcus was already pulling up Rosa's legal records, and what I saw made my stomach drop. She'd been fighting the system for 18 months, jumping through every hoop CPS demanded. Parenting classes, stable housing, steady employment, psychological evaluations, she'd done everything perfectly, and somehow never got her daughter back. There's more, Rosa continued. Emma calls me twice a week, supervised calls through CPS. Last month she started saying strange things about her foster father. That he gets angry when she draws pictures, that he tells her she's not good enough, that she has to earn love by being perfect. He's conditioning her, I said, meeting Jenny's horrified gaze. A 5-year-old. Yesterday she called crying because her foster father threw away a painting she made at school. Said it wasn't good enough and that disappointment builds character. Rosa's voice turned fierce. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. Emma has been drawing since she could hold a crayon. She's never been ashamed of her art before. The parallels to my own childhood hit like physical blows. Criticism disguised as guidance. Love made conditional on impossible standards. A natural creative impulse slowly twisted into desperate performance anxiety. Rosa, I said, meet us at Mel's Diner on Sunset in 2 hours. And bring everything, every legal document, every recorded phone call, every piece of evidence you have about Emma's case. After I hung up, Marcus turned his monitors toward us showing real-time tracking data. The good news is I can monitor Edwin's people and give you advance warning when they're closing in. The bad news is there are now 12 vehicles actively searching for you, plus SWAT surveillance teams at every major intersection downtown. How long before they find us here? Maybe 4 hours if we're lucky. Less if they've got federal resources backing them up. Marcus started copying files to encrypted drives. You need an endgame, Sarah. You can't just keep running and hope this works out. Jenny grabbed my arm. The whistleblower protection lawyer I contacted yesterday, she called back while you were talking to Rosa. Says if we can prove Edwin violated federal research ethics laws, she can get emergency injunctions to stop all his active experiments immediately. How much proof does she need? Enough to convince a federal judge that children are in immediate danger. Jenny pulled out her phone showing an email from the attorney. She wants to meet tonight at 9 p.m. Says she's handled cases like this before, and if our evidence is as strong as I described, she can have warrants issued by tomorrow morning. I looked at the clock, 6:47 p.m. In less than an hour, Edwin would escalate Emma's psychological torture. In 2 hours and 13 minutes, I had to choose between sacrificing myself or watching a kindergartner be systematically destroyed. But maybe, if everything went perfectly, there was a third option. Marcus, I said, how fast can you get into the university's internal communication system? His grin was absolutely terrifying. How fast do you need it done? Marcus's fingers flew across multiple keyboards like he was conducting a digital symphony. Within 20 minutes, he had access to Dr. Ree's university email, calendar system, and internal research databases. What we found made my blood run cold. Jesus Christ, Jenny whispered, reading over my shoulder. He's got 43 active subjects. The database was meticulously organized, spreadsheets tracking everything from subject emotional baseline to optimal stress intervals to creative output measurements. Emma Torres was listed as Subject 12 Beta, current status, accelerated timeline phase 2, responding well to paternal rejection protocols. But she wasn't the youngest. Subject 15 Gamma was 3 years old. Here's tonight's schedule, Marcus said, pulling up Edwin's calendar. 8 p.m., Emma Torres intensive session actor briefed on escalation protocols. 9:30 p.m., Sarah Chin psychological pressure point assessment. What the hell is a pressure point assessment? Marcus clicked through Edwin's email attachments, finding a document titled Subject 7 Alpha Final Phase Implementation. My codename. My psychological destruction, planned out in horrifying detail. They're going to stage Emma's death, I read aloud, my voice barely steady. Make it look like she committed suicide because of emotional abuse, then blame you for interfering with a legitimate research study. Jenny grabbed my shoulder for support. The obituary would trigger your complete psychological collapse, survivor guilt, hero complex failure, evidence of paranoid delusions about fictional conspiracies. The elegant cruelty of it was breathtaking. Edwin wouldn't just break me psychologically, he'd frame my breaking point as proof that I'd been mentally unstable all along. Every attempt to save Emma would be recontextualized as dangerous delusion. Every piece of evidence my mother had gathered would be dismissed as the desperate fantasies of a woman whose daughter had inherited her paranoid tendencies. But look at this, Marcus said, highlighting another email thread. They're not actually going to kill her. It's all staged, fake death certificate, fake funeral, the works. Emma gets relocated to a new experimental setup under a different identity while you spend the next 2 years in psychiatric treatment. My phone rang. Rosa Torres, 40 minutes early. Ms. Chen, something's wrong, she said before I could speak. I was driving to meet you when 2 CPS workers showed up at my apartment. They said there'd been reports of me harassing Emma's foster family and that my visitation rights were being suspended immediately. Where are you now? Hiding in a McDonald's parking lot, but they're looking for me. They said if I tried to contact Emma or her foster family again, they'd file criminal charges for stalking. Rosa's voice cracked. They knew I was going to meet you. Someone told them. Marcus was already pulling up traffic camera footage from around Rosa's apartment building. 2 unmarked vehicles, one with a university parking sticker. They'd been monitoring her communications, he said. Probably for months. Rosa, don't go home, I said. Drive to the address I'm texting you right now. We'll figure this out together. But as I ended the call, Jenny pointed to one of Marcus's monitors showing real-time university security feeds. Sarah, look at this. The screen showed Dr. Reeves in his office, but he wasn't alone. Daniel Morrison sat across from his desk, still wearing the same clothes from our laundromat meeting 12 hours ago. They were having what looked like an intense conversation, Edwin gesturing emphatically while Daniel shook his head repeatedly. Can you get audio? I asked. Marcus adjusted something and suddenly we could hear their voices, tinny but clear through the university's internal communication system. Told you the revelation phase needed to be controlled, Edwin was saying, his grandfatherly tone completely absent. Now she's got Margaret's documentation and enough money to disappear completely. She was never supposed to find out about the other children, Daniel replied, his voice strained. That wasn't part of our agreement. Our agreement was 28 years of psychological conditioning followed by supervised breakdown protocols. You don't get to develop a conscience in the final act, Daniel. Emma Torres is 5 years old, Edwin. 5. What you're doing to her. What I'm doing to her is the same thing I did to Sarah, just more efficiently. And it's working beautifully. Edwin pulled out what looked like a tablet, showing Daniel something on the screen. Emma's artistic output has increased 340% since we introduced the rejection protocols. Her drawings show remarkable emotional sophistication for her age group. Daniel stood up abruptly. I'm done. Find another actor for your final phase. Sit down, Daniel. Edwin's voice turned ice cold. You seem to be forgetting that you've been complicit in federal crimes for 3 decades. Child psychological abuse, research fraud, conspiracy. Do you really want to test how sympathetic a jury will be to your sudden attack of conscience? The feed cut out as Marcus cursed and started typing frantically. They're scrambling their communications. I can get it back, but it'll take time. We don't have time, I said, checking my phone. 7:23 p.m. In 37 minutes, that monster is going to torture a kindergartner, and the only way to stop him is to let him lock me up in a psychiatric facility. Jenny struggled to her feet, wincing as she balanced on her crutches. Or we could do something so publicly dramatic that he can't cover it up. Something that forces the authorities to investigate before he can destroy the evidence. Like what? Her smile was absolutely terrifying. Like live streaming a federal crime in progress. At 8:47 p.m., Marcus had 12 different camera angles streaming live to Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and 3 major news networks. Jenny coordinated with the whistleblower attorney while I sat in Rosa Torres' borrowed Honda, watching Riverside Elementary through night vision equipment that Marcus had somehow procured in 40 minutes. Audio check, Marcus's voice crackled through my earpiece. Sarah, you're broadcasting to 14,000 viewers and counting. Every word you say is being recorded by multiple news outlets. I took a deep breath and looked directly into the tiny camera clipped to my jacket. My name is Sarah Chin. For 28 years, I believed my father was Richard Blackwood, a businessman who never quite approved of my art. Tonight I learned that my father was actually an actor named Daniel Morrison, hired by Dr. Edwin Reeves to systematically damage my psychological development as part of an unauthorized research experiment. Through the elementary school's windows, I could see lights in what looked like an administrative office. Emma Torres was in there somewhere with her fake father, beginning what Edwin had scheduled as an intensive escalation session. Right now, Dr. Reeves is conducting the same experiment on a 5-year-old girl named Emma Torres, I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Her real mother, Rosa Torres, is sitting next to me. Rosa, tell them what CPS told you today. Rosa leaned into the camera frame, her face streaked with tears but her voice fierce. They said I can't see my daughter anymore because I was asking too many questions about why her foster father makes her cry. They said loving your child too much is a form of harassment. Marcus's voice came through my earpiece again, 17,000 viewers now. The LA Times is asking for live interview access. Through my night vision scope, I watched a black sedan pull into the school parking lot. Kevin Walsh, Emma's fake father, got out carrying a briefcase and walked toward the building with the mechanical precision of someone following a detailed script. That's him, I said into the camera. Kevin Walsh, real name on file with the Screen Actors Guild, being paid $4,000 monthly to psychologically torture a kindergartner for academic research. I held up one of my mother's bank statements. These are payment records showing 28 years of similar transactions. My mother documented everything before they killed her. Rosa gasped. They killed your mother? Lung cancer that developed suspiciously quickly after she threatened to expose the program. I focused the camera on Edwin's financial records that Marcus had printed. Dr. Edwin Reeves has been running illegal psychological experiments on children for at least 15 years. Federal funding, university resources, CPS cooperation, this is a massive conspiracy that's destroyed dozens of families. My phone buzzed with a call from Dr. Reeves. I answered on speakerphone, making sure the live stream caught every word. Sarah, you're having a psychotic break, Edwin said, his voice carrying that practiced concerned grandfather tone. I'm watching your social media broadcast, and I think you need immediate medical attention. Actually, Edwin, I think you need immediate legal attention. I held up a federal warrant that the whistleblower attorney had just texted me. Judge Morrison signed emergency protective orders for all your test subjects 20 minutes ago. Federal agents are en route to your location right now. The silence stretched long enough that I thought he'd hung up. Finally, you have no idea what you've just destroyed, Sarah. Years of groundbreaking research. You mean years of child abuse disguised as science. Through the school windows, I saw Kevin Walsh suddenly stop mid-gesture and pull out his phone. Edwin was calling off the session. Emma Torres, subject 12 beta, was getting her childhood back. The beautiful thing about live streaming, I said, looking directly into the camera as sirens began wailing in the distance, is that you can't gaslight an audience of 23,000 people. Edwin Reeves spent 3 decades convincing me I was fundamentally flawed, that my pain was necessary, that my trauma was somehow beautiful. Tonight, 23,000 strangers are watching me prove him wrong. Rosa grabbed my hand as federal vehicles surrounded the elementary school. She's free? Emma's really free? We're all free, I said, and for the first time in 28 years, 2 months, and 17 days, I actually believed it. The live stream ended with Emma Torres running into her real mother's arms in the school parking lot, while Dr. Edwin Reeves was led away in handcuffs, his decades-long experiment finally over. Finding out my father wasn't real had indeed been the best news I ever got.